Hello my friends, and what is up? Ultimus here again with you. Today I want to take a look at the Death Knight talent tree and glyphs, much like we did with the warrior. I'm going to be focusing mostly on Unholy, as that is the spec I play the most, but I will be touching on Frost just a little bit as well to give you hopefully a comprehensive look at what talents I feel will be viable in PvP, whether it be for battlegrounds, arenas, etc, etc. First off, we're going to be looking at our level 56 tier, which includes Plague Bearer, Plague Leech, and Unholy Blight. Before we go any further, I will say that Plague Bearer is the predominant talent, I believe, in this particular section. It buffs the duration of whatever diseases you have up. So whether you are using both Frost Fever and Blood Plague, or you're speccing into Necrotic Plague, either way it's going to buff those diseases. And of course, as an Unholy Death Knight, your diseases are more important, I feel, than any other spec. Obviously they're important in Blood and Frost as well, but they play a bigger part in Unholy's damage, and so the longer those dots can stay up, the better, because as you can see, it adds 4 seconds to the duration of Frost Fever and Blood Plague, and an additional stack to Necrotic Plague. Necrotic's Plague already stacks pretty high, so an additional stack, good thing. And of course, it's always nice to have passive talents when you can get away with it, because that's one less skill to manage on your bars as far as I'm concerned. We do have Plague Leech, which consumes your Blood Plague and Frost Fever on the target to activate up to 2 randomly fully depleted runes as Death Rune. So this one I can see being useful as well, because having rune control is always good. Having better control over your resources is a plus. Depending on your situation, you'll probably I could see Plague Leech being viable, especially more so for Frost than Unholy, because again, being able to have more control over your runes does allow you to obliterate and Frost Strike, etc. on command. And then there is Unholy Blight. Now Unholy Blight would be decent except for that nasty 1.5 minute cooldown. It does surround the Death Knights with a vile swarm of unholy insects for 10 seconds, and it stings enemies within 10 yards, infecting them with Blood Plague and Frost Fever. So it's a nice way to get your diseases on everything up around you, but a 1.5 minute cooldown is just a little bit too long, therefore making the talent pretty underwhelming. So you're safe to go with Plague Bearer or Plague Leech, with emphasis on Plague Bearer as far as I'm concerned. Next on our level 57 tier, we have Lichborn, Anti-Magic Zone, and Purgatory. Lichborn and Anti-Magic Zone, I believe, are our better choices still here. Purgatory tends to be the choice for tanks, and I could still see it being somewhat appealing. And of course, if you're playing with a healer in your 2s or 3s comp, then I could see it being viable. It's not extremely reliable though. Anti-Magic Zone is fabulous because not only does it have benefit for you, but it also allows you to support and help out your teammates as well. And then of course we do have a Lichborn as well, which has changed quite a bit. I do not believe it actually still works with a self-healing macro along with Death Coil, because it doesn't say anything about making you undead. You just simply increase your leech by 10% and make you immune to charm, fear, and sleep. Now I do enjoy the talent, and it does tend to be my preferred talent, though again, keeping in mind depending on who I'm playing with or what scenario I'm playing in, I would not hesitate to use Anti-Magic Zone either. In our level 58 tier, we have Death's Advance, Chillbanes, and Asphyxiate. Death's Advance, you passively move 10% faster, and movement impairing effects may not reduce you below 70% of normal movement speed. And then when it is activated, you gain 30% more movement speed and may not be slowed below 100%. It's kind of cool that it is activated, but I don't see it being too useful. We've done fine without it being able to function without needing to have any movement speed buffs to ourselves as Death Knights, and I don't really see us needing it at all. Chillbanes, victims of your Frost Fever are chilled, reducing movement speed by 50% for 10 seconds. Victims of your Change of Ice are immobilized for 3 seconds. Definitely could be useful, but I find it to be, or I find both of these talents to be lackluster compared to Asphyxiate, which replaces Strangulate. Just basically stuns them and silences them if they're immune to stun. So either way, you're looking at a fabulous interrupt, a little bit of crowd control, and heals for your team on a 30-second cooldown. Looking at our level 60 talents, we have Blood Tap, Runic Empowerment, and Runic Corruption. The longest time I went with Blood Tap. Blood Tap is what I'm using on live, and it's still a good talent, but I'm leaning more towards Runic Corruption, because when you spend Runic Power, you have a 1.5% chance per Runic Power spent to increase your rune regeneration rate by 100% for 3 seconds. It's been working out quite nicely. I like the pace it sets for gameplay. And again, it's one more passive talent that I don't really have to worry about, though Blood Tap is pretty nice to macro into certain abilities. I just like the way Runic Corruption functions, and again, it hasn't really let me down yet. It's been functioning really well, so it's a strong talent, and I feel like it is going to be the talent of choice in your level 60 tier. And of course, Runic Empowerment functions the same way, except it has a chance to activate a random fully depleted room rather than increase your runic power regeneration. So it depends on if you want rune regeneration or runic power regeneration. So that one's completely up to you. I feel like for Unholy, I prefer the runic power increase. I prefer the runic power regeneration rate. Any one of these talents I feel like could be useful, again depending on if you play PvP, PvE, but I just lean more towards Runic Corruption. It's just the one I'm favoring right now unless anything changes. Our level 75 tier we have Death Pact, Death Siphon, and Conversion. Now Conversion I still feel like is the strongest talent in this section. It's just nuts. Death Siphon still hits pretty hard at lower levels. That healing on it is insane, 335% of the damage dealt, so that can, you know, it's basically gonna more than triple whatever damage you deal. Hey, B1, congrats, Horde. And then Death Pact. Death Pact works a little bit differently now. No longer sacrifices your minion, but it heals the Death Knight for 50% of maximum health and absorbs incoming healing equal to 25% of your maximum health for 15 seconds. I don't see it necessarily being a big winner compared to Conversion, especially with that healing absorb there on it, depending on, again, your comp or your gameplay style. I ran it for a little bit playing Frost and even Unholy for a bit, and it's not terrible, but just compared to Conversion, because Conversion you can put up basically whenever you have runic power. Oh hey buddy, how's it going? I'll just kind of walk. What the? Alright. Anyways, Conversion being on no cooldown just simply costs 20 runic power per second, and it's a 2% tick of your total health. I just see that being the better talent choice out of all three, but maybe live will prove me wrong. In our level 90 tier, we have Gorfine's Grasp, Remorseless Winter, and Desecrated Ground. Gorfine's Grasp never really felt like it had much of a place in PvP, definitely more of a tanking talent. I felt like I've tried it a couple times, both on live and beta, and I just felt like Remorseless Winter or Desecrated Ground was just better. Remorseless Winter still functions the same way. Once it hits 5 stacks, the enemy is stunned or frozen for 6 seconds. It still looks cool, functions well. Most people don't really evade it or get out of the way. They think they can sit through the duration of it. I don't know. So it functions very well. But Desecrated Ground I do enjoy. It's basically another trinket. And of course, any kind of free motion and stun break is always good. So Desecrated Ground I feel like is the ideal talent there. Though 2 minutes, of course, for balance is there still, whereas Remorseless Winter only has 1 minute cooldown. So depending on what you're trying to bring to the team or what you're comping with, then I could see either one of those being viable. I do tend to prefer Desecrated Ground for Unholy, whereas Remorseless Winter for Frost. Maybe it's an aesthetic thing, I don't know. Both are functional for either or, but I do feel like you're going to find more of your Death Knights taking Desecrated Ground over anything else in the tier. And finally, we get to our level 100 bracket. Now, I will say up front, I like all of these talents. I think they're all cool. I think they're all functional based on what I've seen. Now, compared to what spec you're playing, one might be better than the other, depending on what situation you're in, PvP or PvE. I could see some being better than the others, but either way, they're fun, and I feel like if you're just goofing around having fun in BGs or doing some 2v2 skirmishes with friends, or even just 2v2 arenas just for fun, I can see either one of these being decent. I don't feel like picking one over the other is really going to break or gimp your gameplay too hard. That being said though, for Unholy, Necrotic Plague is baller. It's a shadow disease that deals 303 Shadow Frost damage per stack every 2 seconds for 30 seconds. Each time it deals damage, it gains 1 stack, and infects another nearby enemy within 8 yards if possible. You gain 2 runic power whenever a target infected with Necrotic Plague attempts to attack you. Replaces Blood Plague and Frost Fever and is applied by any ability which applied either. This effect cannot be refreshed. It gains 1 stack instead. As you can imagine, that stacks and gets out of control really quickly. Anytime you've got Hunter pets, Mage pets, Warlock pets, mass accumulation of players in one zone, whether it's a 3v3 match, 5 vs 5 match, random battleground, rated battleground, you're going to see diseases and numbers flying everywhere. And the fact that every time it ticks, it jumps, and then instead of refreshing the stack, it's higher. The damage does indeed get higher with the stack. Super cool, super nice. Only 1 disease to worry about, as it clumps your Blood Plague and Frost Fever into 1. and it just gets out of control super quick. It's my preferred talent of choice for Unholy, and I think you're going to see the majority of Unholy Death Knights running with it. You can't go wrong, and you will not be steered wrong with Necrotic Plague. That does bring me now to Defile. Defile replaces our Death and Decay, and this one is cool because every time it does damage, it spreads, both in distance, and the damage increases by 2.5%. Anybody standing it will deal 10% less damage to you, so it's nice. It works both as a defensive and offensive talent. I've seen Defile get out of hand really quickly. It spreads pretty far. On a 30-second cooldown isn't bad either. One Unholy rune. It looks cool. It's the black pool that you see basically on the ground that Death Knights will drop. I do see a lot of Blood Death Knights taking it because it does obviously help them with their tanking. Last but not least, that brings us to Breath of Sindragosa. This talent is just cool looking. It functions cool. I love using it for Frost. Not so much for Unholy, though. Again, I don't feel like it's a terrible choice, but compared to Necrotic Plague, just hard to justify. But don't get me wrong, again, this is a great talent. 2-minute cooldown is a little bit steep, but it makes sense when you think about the fact that there's a damage and a healing factor with this. It basically functions very similarly to Conversion, except it does damage. It costs 15 runic power plus 15 per second. So the initial cost is 15 runic power, and then every second it is up, it costs 15 runic power. Now it continuously deals 8,359 Shadow Frost damage every 1 second to enemies in a cone in front of you within 12 yards and affects them with Mark of Sindragosa for 6 seconds. You will continue breathing until cancelled or runic power is exhausted. So you're going to see a nice runic power dump here if you got really nothing else to do. This could be a decent gap filler. It functions as a defensive and offensive cooldown, which again is always nice to have that versatility in your skills. 2-minute cooldown, a bit high, but I'm not complaining either because again it's a balancing issue, and I can see how anything less than that would probably get out of control really quickly. Not to mention this thing has one of the cooler looking animations for Death Knights, I think. So what you're looking at right here again on my talent trees really quick is my typical go-to. Oh, they took out of there really quickly. Wait, come back! What you're looking at here on my Unholy tree is my typical build right now on the beta, and what I see myself using going into live, should I choose to continue to play my Death Knight, and should everything stay the same. You see that Plague Bearer, Lichborn, Asphyxiate, Runic Corruption, Conversion, Desecrated Ground, and Necrotic Plague are going to be your best talents of choice. Of course, that could change depending on if you're just goofing off in Battlegrounds or playing some serious threes. We'll see how all that plays out, but this is what I'm banking on and planning on rolling right now. Let's look at some glyphs just really quick for Unholy. I still feel Glyph of Anti-Magic Shell is one of your better choices. Causes your Anti-Magic Shell to absorb all incoming magical damage up to the absorption limit. Basically everything, if you read the tooltip, all magic damage for 5 seconds. Glyph of Icy Touch is still nice, and I do prefer it because it does have the Dispel effect on it. And then of course Glyph of Dark Simulacrum, which reduces the cooldown of Dark Simulacrum by 30 seconds and increases its duration by 4 seconds. Not a bad thing there. The Glyph of Death Coil is interesting. Basically allows your Death Coil spell is now usable on all allies when you cast on a non-undead ally. Death Coil shrouds them with a protective barrier that absorbs up to 6,760 damage. So basically allows you to use the functionality of how Lichborn used to be used, except it's usable on all players, whether they're undead or not. So that could be something I could see replacing possibly a Glyph of Dark Simulacrum with. Just the idea of being able to use that and again add some more utility or some ability to save potential dead allies and friends in arenas and BGs or myself is always nice. Taking a look now at the Frost Death Knight talents. Now most of these talents do function exactly the same, but I just wanted to kind of go over what glyphs I was using and what talents I thought were best for the Frost Death Knight. I still feel like Plague Bearer is your best choice for your level 56 tier. Additional longevity on your diseases is a good thing, and I just prefer that style of gameplay. I don't have to worry about keeping my diseases up as often if I have a 4-second increased duration on them. Lichborn or Anti-Magic Shield or Anti-Magic Zone, again, still your talents of choice. I believe both of them share that 2-minute cooldown, so it really doesn't matter too much, I suppose. It just depends on if you want to be able to simply take care of yourself, which is good because being immune to Charm, Fear, and Sleep is a good thing. Of course, increased Leech is good, but also being able to shield friendly allies is good as well. So I feel like you really can't go wrong with either one, but I do prefer the Lichborn. Level 58 tier, Asphyxiate, still the talent of choice, I feel like, compared to Chillbane's and Death's Advance. Along with Runic Corruption, of course, I do feel like Runic Corruption is the better choice. It is worth mentioning, though, you may alter your talent here depending on if you are playing Frost Dual Wield or Frost Two-Hander. And the reason that is because if you're playing Frost Two-Hander, your main emphasis is going to be on Obliterate. Now, the reason this is such an important decision between your talents is because Obliterate costs runes. Obliterate costs 1 Holy and 1 Frost, and if you have a Death rune or has a chance to deplete a randomly depleted rune, this could be a better choice. However, Blood Tap may not even be the better choice there at that point. Having control over your runes, which can be used to be spent on any ability you have that costs a rune. Having control over your Obliterate timing, being able to time your burst better for PvE or PvP. Obliterate is still your hardest hitting skill, unless you go Frost Dual Wield. Then your emphasis is going to be on Frost Strike. It's amazing how Dual Wield Frost Strike hits like a truck, and Two-Hander Obliterate is your big damaging ability. So depending on what your playstyle is, what you're going for, that's going to affect which talents that you're going to pick. And I do believe Runic Corruption is going to be your better choice if you're going dual wield, because you want that runic power regeneration so you can Frost Strike more often. So just to recap and make sure I didn't lose anybody, Frost Dual Wield, Runic Corruption is your go-to talent for sure, whereas Frost Two-Hander, Blood Tap, or Runic Empowerment would probably be your better choice. Moving on to our level 75 tier, of course, Death Pact, Death Siphon, and Conversion. This one could be interesting, Death Siphon, because I feel like your damage might be a little bit higher as Frost your initial hits. So you could see Death Siphon being an interesting choice of talents, especially because, again, there's no runic power cost and there's no cooldown on it, just 1 death rune. So you line up your death runes quite nicely, and you can see some decent survivability. Death Pact still functions the same 50% heal, absorbs healing equal to 25% of max health, and then, of course, Conversion. You could probably play around with these in combination with whichever talent you took in your level 60 tier as well, so keep that in mind. But I do see Conversion still being the best talent in that section if you're looking for the cream of the crop. At level 90 tier, still Gorfine's Grasp, Remorseless Winter, and Desecrated Ground. Remorseless Winter, I feel like, is my preferred talent of choice for Frost, though you really still can't go wrong with Desecrated Ground. And then our level 100 tier, lastly, of course, as I said, Breath of Cindergosa is my talent of choice for Frost. I love it. It's fun. I do want to take a look at our major glyphs. I still take the glyph of Icy Touch, which dispels 1 magic effect from the target. I still prefer the glyph of Anti-Magic Shield. And then this one kind of changes up a little bit because of Empowerment. This one is dope, and you can use this one for Unholy or Frost. I did want to save it for Frost, at least. I didn't want to talk about all the things for Unholy. But with this, whenever you use your Empower rune weapon, it also heals you for 30% of your maximum health. That's pretty nuts. But as of right now, these are the talents that I see to be the most effective for Frost. We'll see what changes, what stays the same come live. So with that, that's really what I wanted to look at. But those are my thoughts on Death Knights. They are extremely strong right now. I don't want to say OP, because they are killable, but they're very strong. They have great survivability. They do a ton of damage. So if you're a Death Knight player, rejoice. You're looking good. You're looking strong. The only complaint about Death Knights right now is that there's a lot of downtime. And you might be saying, well, you've said that about a lot of classes. Death Knights are feeling it probably the worst compared to all other classes. The downtime that Death Knights are dealing with is pretty severe, which of course is kind of a bummer, because slowed down gameplay is never fun gameplay, but it is what it is. And we'll continue to roll with the punches and try to adjust to the changes that are coming. So that's going to do it for this video. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.